Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we are inside of Turret 3. The majority of the videos we film are in Turret 2, which is the one that we've restored and have great LED lighting in. But Turret 3 has at least one feature that the other two turrets do not. We are at the forward end of the turret. So forward towards the superstructure is that way. Aft towards the stern of the ship is that way. And here in the overhead, here we have the stops that prevent the turret from rotating around into our own superstructure. Now, these are really cool. They are cast metal pieces that were made in the foundry at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, probably in 1940, maybe 1941, as the turret was being assembled in the turret shop there at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. The idea is the rotation motor for the turret is always on when the turret is in operation. Now, if you call for the turret to move using the hand wheels, you're actually moving a plate that's allowing hydraulic fluid to come in, and that is acting on the gearing, which allows the turret to rotate. There is no sort of electronic cutoff or anything like that to turn the motor off if it gets too far in its train. Originally, the turrets on the Iowa-class battleships could rotate about 270 degrees with a blind arc about 60 degrees behind the turret. So, since this motor is always running, and they didn't want to do an electronic cutoff, which would then require the very big electric motors, the largest of the 1,000 electric motors on the ship at 300 horsepower. So it's got a pretty massive draw. They didn't want to shut it down and then bring it back online again. So the solution to keep the turret from running into the superstructure was just to have a hydraulic piston on one end and these big metal stops on the other. These stops just contact that piston and prevent the turret physically from being able to rotate, no matter what the motor is trying to do. Now, where we get into the fun stuff with Turret 3, the arc of fire got restricted by a couple more degrees during the 1980s reactivation. On the starboard side, they installed the refueling boom, and that projects out from the side of the superstructure more. In the 1980s, they added the boat boom on the port side. Because they removed the aviation crane back aft, the boats on rolling carts on the fantail still needed a way to get into the water. So these ships are asymmetrical. They were already putting the refueling boom on the starboard side, boat boom on the port side, and again, between the boat parked there and the boom and the winches and all of that, it now interferes with the arc of fire. It's interesting because during World War II, the superstructure was specifically designed with these angles carved out of the forward and aft ends of it so that the turrets could get as big of an arc of fire as reasonable. But in the 1980s, knowing that if the guns fire too close to the superstructure, you damage your own ship with the overpressure of the guns going off, the Navy allowed that arc of fire to be opened up. They were almost always firing purely broadside. They were mostly being used for shore bombardment, and for that, it's rarely a rush, so you can pre-position the entire ship rather than having to press the turrets up against its stops. So when this happened, they moved the stops. So here you can see the bolts where the stop was originally installed, and they welded new studs onto the superstructure here. The barbette of the turret, and notice here where we've got the riveted plate, they didn't weld any. Welding on the riveting plate would have caused the rivets to expand and pop off, so they just accepted being 4 fewer bolts than they previously had. So it's really cool to see this modification inside the turret. It's one of the few changes that the gun turrets get over the ship's career, and only Turret 3 gets this one. Now, the reason we came here today is because we recently found a packet of blueprints and hand drawings by the engineer in charge of the project, Richard Landgraf. Dick Landgraf, better known as Rusty Battleships, from his handle on the old forums back in the day, was the engineer in charge of the Battleship program at Long Beach, and so he hand drew some really fantastic sketches of moving these stops for the turrets as part of this project. And there's some great calculations in here, and then it goes from the sketches like these all the way to actual traditional blueprints being made for the project. So it was really cool finding this documentation of a job that we knew was done, but didn't previously have the references for. What other modifications would you like to see us take a deep dive into in the future? This one is really interesting to me because changing the equipment mounted on the outside of the superstructure, you don't think of the follow-on changes that have to be made, such as moving this massive multi-ton casting, basically, what's that, about 3 feet to the left for this side and to the right for the one on the opposite side. So it's interesting how each change to the ship has these knock-on effects further down the line. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about us and our channel. Thanks for watching.